This man claimed that death can be stopped through speech. The irony is that just a few weeks before possible Nobel recognition, he was gone. A coincidence? Then why do people who eat properly, jog in the mornings, take vitamins, and take care of their health still grow old, develop cancer and diabetes, and die in suffering? Why do doctors shrug their shoulders, and why do pills increasingly fail to work? A scientist named Pyotr Goryaev, a doctor of biological sciences and a possible nominee for the Nobel Prize, said that he had found the answer. He said that death is not a sentence, but a malfunction, an error in a program that a person zapuskает himself, with every word, with every thought. How is this even possible? What exactly did he understand? And who benefited from keeping this hidden? Right now, we are going to talk about 5 discoveries made by Pyotr Goryaev, and the 5th of them is capable of overturning everything you believe to be true about life, death, and reality itself. The future scientist was born in 1942 into an ordinary Soviet family. No one could have imagined that this child would one day go against the entire world of medicine. He earned a doctorate in biological sciences, became an academician of the Russian Academy of Natural Sciences, but the path to recognition was brutal. Official science declared his ideas pseudoscientific. Colleagues mocked him. The media called him a charlatan. In the middle of the 1980s, Goryaev began experiments that, according to him, turned everything upside down. He proposed looking at DNA not as a dead chemical chain, but as a living system capable of receiving and transmitting information. While other scientists were cutting molecules with instruments, he tried to listen to them, and he claimed that DNA emits waves similar to radio signals. According to his version, these waves carry data about health, diseases, and even life expectancy. In the early 2000s, as Goryaev himself stated, a breakthrough occurred. He came to the conclusion that DNA reacts to human speech as powerfully as it does to radiation or chemical exposure. To the scientific world, this sounded like a slap in the face. Representatives of traditional medicine refused to publish his work, saying, "This is impossible, it contradicts the laws of physics." But the experiments, according to the scientists' supporters, could not simply be ignored. In the year 2020, something strange happened. Goryaev was put forward for the Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. Information circulated in narrow scientific circles. There was no official confirmation, but his supporters were waiting for recognition. On the 17th of November 2020, Pyotr Goryaev suddenly dies, 78 years old. Just 1 week before that, according to his relatives, he felt completely healthy. His family speaks of a heart attack. Doctors confirm it, but the questions do not disappear. How does a man who spent 40 years studying the nature of life and death leave so suddenly? Why exactly on the eve of possible global recognition? Who benefited from silencing him? And what exactly did he discover that could threaten the business of pharmaceutical corporations, measured in trillions of dollars? Before his death, as his students claim, Goryaev managed to pass on the main thing: information about 5 key discoveries, information that, according to them, is capable of changing the life of anyone who hears it. Today you will learn about these discoveries. But first, a fact that makes your blood run cold, and this is not even the most frightening part. Next comes an experiment that modern science still cannot clearly explain. Goryaev's first discovery is connected to an experiment that sounds like the plot of science fiction. The scientist placed a sample of human DNA into a completely sealed chamber. Instruments recorded weak electromagnetic radiation coming from the molecule. Nothing unusual. Any living tissue emits energy. Everything fit within the framework of physics. Then the DNA was completely removed from the chamber. The space was cleaned down to the last molecule, and everything was checked repeatedly. According to all the laws of nature, the radiation should have disappeared instantly. The source was removed. The signal should have vanished. Iron logic. But the opposite happened. The instruments continued to record waves. A day passed, then another, a week, a month. For 40 days, detectors captured radiation in an absolutely empty chamber. Goryaev called this phenomenon the DNA phantom. A trace, an imprint, a hologram in space. Matter disappeared. But information did not, just as a melody continues to sound in your head after the radio has been turned off. The scientist repeated the experiment again and again, changed equipment, invited independent specialists. The result did not change. The phantom remained. Information turned out to be stronger than matter, and this became a blow to the entire materialistic picture of the world. If a trace remains after the destruction of the carrier, then information is capable of existing separately from the physical obolochki. From this, Goryaev made a conclusion he himself called revolutionary. Every cell leaves a wave imprint in space. Every DNA molecule creates an invisible copy of itself. And this copy, according to him, continues to exist even after the death of the cell. Imagine the moment of death. The body breaks down, disintegrates, disappears, but the wave trace remains. It does not go anywhere. It continues to exist in space, like a radio signal that cannot be seen but can still be caught by a receiver. And it is precisely here that Goryaev arrives at a question that is deeply unsettling. If every cell leaves behind a phantom, then what happens to consciousness, to thoughts, memory, a person's character? Does all of this really vanish without a trace? Or does the personality also leave its own imprint after the death of the body? This question is what led him to the second discovery. And this is where the story turns into a real thriller. The first discovery already knocks the ground out from under your feet, but what comes next is even more frightening. Because now the subject is words, about how ordinary human speech is capable not just of influencing, but literally destroying or restoring the body at the molecular level. Goryaev's second discovery shocked even those who supported him. He began a series of experiments whose results looked impossible. The essence was as follows. DNA, according to his claim, does not merely react to sound. It perceives the meaning of spoken words in the same way a computer understands a programmer's commands. Goryaev took samples of healthy human DNA, placed them under a microscope, and began exposing them to sound waves. For this, a special laser modulated by human speech was used. The beam carried sound information directly into the molecular structure. The first stage involved insults and curses. The scientist deliberately pronounced the harshest, most malicious words. What appeared under the microscope was terrifying. Chromosomes began to deform, twist, and tear apart. The damage increased with every second. Goryaev stopped the experiment and carried out measurements. The result was staggering. The destruction of DNA corresponded to radiation exposure with a power of 30,000 Röntgen. For comparison, the lethal dose of radiation for a human being is about 400 Röntgen. It turned out that a single curse caused damage dozens of times stronger than a fatal dose of radiation. And this was presented not as a metaphor, but as a physical reality recorded by instruments. After that, the reverse experiment followed. The scientist took the same DNA samples destroyed by aggressive speech and began to expose them to words of a different kind. He read Orthodox prayers, spoke Buddhist mantras, said simple, kind phrases, but he did it sincerely with strong emotional intensity, and what many would call a miracle occurred. Torn chromosomes began to reconnect. Damaged areas were restored. The process was visible directly during observation. The stronger the feeling invested in the words, the faster the recovery took place. Sincere prayer worked noticeably more effectively than mechanical repetition. A state of love proved more powerful than indifference. It was at that moment that Goryaev drew the conclusion that later became central to his work. Every word a person speaks programs the body. This was not about psychology, not about suggestion, and not about the placebo effect. According to his claim, it was a direct physical impact of a sound wave on molecular structure. When a mother shouts at a child, she, according to this theory, destroys the child's DNA. The same thing happens in internal dialogue. When a person tells themselves, "I am sick, I am old, I am dying," they, according to Goryaev, launch the process of destroying their own cells. But the reverse mechanism also exists. Kind words addressed to oneself or to others activate processes of restoration. Prayer was viewed not as an appeal to the heavens, but as a form of wave therapy capable of correcting the genetic code. Every kind word became medicine, and every curse became poison, and the organism hears everything. Think about how many times a day you silently or aloud say phrases like, "I am tired," "My head hurts," "This is unbearable," "I cannot handle this." Each such phrase, according to Goryaev, is equivalent to a blow to DNA with a power of 30,000 Röntgen. And now imagine that this happens every day, for months and for years. This is exactly how, according to his version, diseases arise that doctors call unexplained. But this was only the beginning. The next discovery addressed why some people live to a very old age and remain healthy, while others leave much earlier despite treatment. The third discovery, Goryaev connected with the existence of a single informational field of the Earth. It sounds esoteric, but as he claimed, it was confirmed by calculations and experiments. According to his concept, all information about every living being is stored in a common field. It is a gigantic, invisible library in which the history of every cell, every organism, and every person who has ever lived is recorded. To confirm this, Goryaev conducted experiments with plants. He took a young, healthy wheat plant, recorded the wave characteristics of its DNA, and then selected an old plant that was almost dead. Its leaves were yellowed, the stem was drooping, and the root system was deteriorating. By all indications, it had only a few days left. Then the scientist began to expose this plant to a recording of wave information obtained from the young specimen. The result did not take long. After approximately 1 day, the old plant began to revive. New green leaves appeared, the stem straightened, and the roots gradually strengthened. Only 1 week passed, and what was happening looked unreal. In front of the eyes there was no longer a dying plant, but a strong, fresh shoot filled with life. No trace of recent wilting. And here the key question arose: where did the information for recovery come from? The plant itself could not have invented it. Goryaev came to the conclusion that the source was external. The plant was reading data from a common informational space, and the wave recording served only as a pass, a kind of access code that opened the door to a gigantic data storage resembling an endless library. After that, Goryaev moved on to the next stage and decided to test his theory on animals. He began conducting similar experiments on rats suffering from a severe form of diabetes. The animals were exposed to wave information obtained from healthy individuals. The results were shocking. The pancreas began to function. The blood sugar level gradually decreased and returned to normal, without insulin, without pills, without diets, only due to wave information, and then even more. Blind mice, whose retinas had been almost completely destroyed, were exposed to information from sighted animals. Time passed, and they began to see. The retina, according to Goryaev, was restored literally from nothing. The cells seemed to receive instructions, read the health program from the informational field, and rebuild their function. It was then that he drew the conclusion he himself called revolutionary. All living beings are connected to a single field. According to this concept, every thought, every word, and every emotion creates a wave in the common ocean of information. When a person experiences anger, hatred, or envy, they distort the space around them. This affects the health of everyone nearby, especially children, because their connection to the field is much stronger. And when a person experiences love, joy, or gratitude, they do the opposite. They cleanse the space, and this influence spreads to others, even at a distance. This is exactly how Goryaev explained the power of praying for another person. It does not matter where that person is, on the next street or on the other side of the planet. The wave goes into the informational field and reaches the recipient because distance does not exist in that space. There are no meters or kilometers. There is only connection. The same explanation was applied to phenomena that science prefers to call mysticism. Why does a mother feel when her child is unwell, even if thousands of kilometers separate them? Because they are connected through the common field. Why do twins feel each other's pain? Why do people dream of events that have not yet occurred? All of this, according to Goryaev's version, is the process of reading information from the single field. It would seem that the picture is starting to come together, but this is precisely where the most dangerous part begins. The fourth discovery explains why the scientist was truly feared. Goryaev did not stop at theory. He created a practical treatment technology based on wave matrices, a technology that directly threatened the existence of the pharmaceutical industry, an industry with an annual turnover of several $1 trillion. The principle was extremely simple. The wave characteristics of healthy DNA from a young organism were recorded and then used to affect the patient's diseased cells. The cells read the health program and began to restore themselves, without chemical drugs, without surgeries, without side effects. In the middle of the 2000s, according to Goryaev, he conducted an officially registered experiment. He took a group of rats with a severe form of diabetes. Their pancreas was almost not producing insulin. By human standards, this corresponded to the final stage of the disease. Without treatment, the animals were supposed to die within 2 to 3 weeks. The scientists began exposing them to a wave matrix of a healthy pancreas from young rats. The sessions lasted about 20 minutes and were conducted several times a week. After only a few days, the sugar level began to decrease, and after several weeks it returned to normal. The rats, according to Goryaev, were completely cured of diabetes. Their pancreas restored the ability to produce insulin. The next experiment looked even more incredible. Goryaev took a group of blind mice. Their retinas had been completely destroyed by a congenital genetic defect. Such blindness is considered incurable. Modern medicine can only slow the process, but it cannot restore vision. Retinal transplantation is technically impossible. Nevertheless, the scientist began exposing the animal's eyes to wave information from a healthy retina. The changes occurred slowly, but steadily. After approximately a couple of weeks, the mice began reacting to light. After about a month, they were already distinguishing objects, and after some more time, their vision, according to Goryaev, was fully restored. Blind mice were seeing just as well as healthy ones. There is also unofficial information about the treatment of people. Patients with oncological diseases, whom doctors had given only 1 month to live, underwent courses of wave therapy with Goryaev. In some cases, tumors shrank, and in some cases disappeared completely. These cases were not documented because official medicine refused to recognize the method, but the testimonies of the patients themselves remain. And now it becomes clear why all of this was so dangerous. If cancer, diabetes, and blindness can be treated using light and sound, then why are chemotherapy courses costing hundreds of thousands of dollars needed? Why are lifelong insulin injections needed? Why are extremely complex eye surgeries needed? In that case, pharmaceutical corporations lose a market valued in trillions of dollars. This was no longer just about money. It was a system, a real empire. And any empire always protects itself. Goryaev's work was not accepted by scientific journals. His developments were ignored by patent institutions. The media slapped the label of a charlatan on him. And when all of that still was not enough, the following happened. Just a few weeks before a possible nomination for the Nobel Prize, he suddenly dies. A heart attack. 78 years old. A man who claimed he knew how to prevent diseases. And now, attention. What follows is the main thing, the reason people watch this video all the way to the end. The information that, according to his students, Goryaev managed to pass on shortly before his death. The fifth and most radical discovery concerns the very nature of death. He stated, "In the usual understanding, death does not exist. What we call death is only a malfunction, an error in a program, in a code that a person gradually writes into their own body from the moment of birth." To explain this, Goryaev used a simple image. Imagine the human body as a receiving device. Very complex, finely tuned, but still a receiver. It catches a signal from the informational field and turns it into life. While the receiver works, a person lives. When it breaks down, what we call death occurs. But a key question arises. What happens to the signal itself? To the wave that this receiver was picking up? Goryaev's answer was as hard as it gets. The signal does not disappear anywhere. A radio wave continues to exist even when the receiver is broken. In exactly the same way, according to his claim, consciousness does not ichizite after the death of the body. It remains in the informational field, like the phantom trace of DNA which, as he had claimed earlier, continues to emit waves for 40 days after the molecule is destroyed. But then the next most dangerous question appears. If the signal remains, where does the malfunction itself come from? Why does the receiver break down? After dozens of experiments and observations, Goryaev came to a conclusion he himself called frightening. A person does not die by accident. Step by step, they zaposkite this process themselves. We program our own death. Every time you say the phrase, "I am aging," you are, according to Goryaev, launching an aging program inside yourself. The words "I am sick" turn into a command for illness, and the thought "I will die" becomes an instruction for death. This is not a figure of speech and not philosophy. Within this concept, it is a concrete physical process. Any word creates a sound wave. The wave affects DNA, and DNA restructures its structure in accordance with the received information. If the signal is destructive, the structure is destroyed. If it is constructive, restoration is activated. Goryaev emphasized that the fear of death is the most powerful of all destructive programs. A person is afraid of dying. This fear creates a colossal wave in the informational field. The wave is fixed in DNA. Cells receive a command to prepare for completion. Aging processes begin. The organism fades slowly because it was configured for this in advance. But if a program can be written, it can also be rewritten. Goryaev claimed that people who do not fear death live longer, not because they are braver or stronger, but because there is no fear signal in their DNA. Their cells do not receive an order to die. The scientist studied long-lived people from all over the world, individuals who lived 100, 110, and even 150 years. He was looking for a pattern. Neither nutrition, nor sports, nor medications provided a common answer. The only thing that united them was their attitude toward death. They did not perceive it as a catastrophe. For them, it was a natural transition into another state. Goryaev recorded these conclusions in his final work. He wrote that a person exists as long as their own melody sounds in the informational field. The death of the body is not the end of the personality. It is a transition from one form of existence to another, from the material to the wave-based, from the visible to the invisible. But information about a person does not disappear. It remains forever. This is how he explained the phenomena of reincarnation. Children who remember other lives. According to this logic, they are not inventing anything. They are reading data from the field where the memory of everyone who has ever lived is stored. Every word you say, every action, every thought is already recorded in this space. They influence other people, future generations, and even the very structure of reality. Shortly before his death, Goryaev told his students that if something happened to him, it would not change anything. The information already exists. It cannot be destroyed. It can only be accepted or rejected. A week later, he was gone, but his words remained, his discoveries remained, and now you know what he knew. Enough theory. We move on to practice. Here are specific steps that you can begin applying today to rewrite your own reality. First rule. Immediately remove destructive phrases from your speech. I am tired. I am sick. I am aging. I will not succeed. I cannot handle this. Each of these is an order from your DNA for destruction. Replace them with the opposite. I am full of energy. My body is healthy. I am becoming younger every day. Everything works out for me. I will handle this. Second rule. Say kind words to yourself out loud. Every day. In the morning, go to the mirror. Look yourself in the eyes and say, I love you. You are beautiful. You are healthy. You are strong. This is not self-suggestion. Within this concept, it is direct reprogramming of the genetic code through sound. Third rule. Use prayers or affirmations with genuine feeling. It does not matter what you believe in. What matters is sincerity and emotional intensity. Prayer was viewed as a concentrated wave of restoration. It goes into the informational field and returns amplified many times over. Fourth rule. Completely eliminate swearing and curses. especially directed at yourself and loved ones. Remember the magnitude of 30,000 Röntgen. According to Goryaev, this is exactly the kind of blow that every rude word delivers to the cells of the organism. This was presented not as an exaggeration, but as a recorded fact. Fifth rule: stop fearing death. Realize that you do not disappear along with the body. Consciousness transitions into the informational field and continues to exist. The fear of death is the most destructive program of all possible ones. Remove it, and according to this concept, you will extend your life. So, what kind of music is playing inside you right now? A funeral requiem, or a hymn of life? Goryaev claimed that the choice always remains with the person. With every word, every thought, and every emotion, you are writing the code of your own reality. Try following these rules for just 1 week, 7 days, and you will feel changes in your body, in your state, and in your life itself. And in the next video, we will talk about other scientists who, according to rumors, were forced into silence for telling the truth.